Welcome to Charette Theory, where design is not just about what we see, but how we feel. Where rooms are not simply arranged, they're composed like slow, thoughtful music. And today, we invite you into one such composition. A space shaped not by urgency, but by rhythm. Not by spectacle, but by silence. So take a breath. Let the outside world fall away. And step into a kitchen that welcomes you with light, with quiet, with timeless care. Let's begin the return. This is Sunlit Silence, a Mediterranean kitchen made for those suspended hours of a summer afternoon when time begins to blur. When the light softens, the breeze quiets, and the world, for a moment, stops asking. Here, we are not moving fast. We are not tearing things down or chasing newness. This episode is not about renovation in the traditional sense. It is about something quieter, more foundational. A shift in how we approach the spaces where we live, cook, and gather. This is about returning to stillness and understanding that stillness isn't empty. It's full. Full of warmth, memory, and meaning. A Mediterranean kitchen, at its most authentic, isn't curated for visitors. It doesn't ask to be admired, it simply exists, gently, purposefully. You feel it more than you see it. The way late sun grazes the uneven edge of a handmade tile. The weight of a weathered wooden table. The subtle scent of dried oregano hanging beside a clay pitcher filled with water. The distant sound of bees in the garden and the whisper of linen curtains billowing in the heat. It's the kind of kitchen that doesn't demand your attention, but rewards your presence. A room that seems to inhale and exhale with you. A room that teaches you how to be still, without ever saying a word. And in this stillness, we discover that design is not about achieving a perfect image. It's about honoring use, where, time. It's about allowing a space to hold its past and its present in the same breath. In this hour, we'll explore how Mediterranean design can shift how we see and feel in the kitchen. We'll look not just at styling tips, but at the deeper logic and love behind the choices. Why rough materials matter. Why muted colors soothe. Why natural light can be more expressive than ornament. And how this ancient design language remains as relevant today as it was centuries ago, not because it is trendy, but because it is true. This isn't just about shaping a room, it's about reshaping the pace at which we live within it. To truly understand the Mediterranean kitchen, we need to go far beyond surface details. Beyond the terracotta pots, the tiled backsplashes, the weathered wood. These are not just stylistic choices. They are the visible traces of a philosophy of place, a worldview shaped by land, labor, and light. Mediterranean design doesn't originate in showrooms. It grows out of geography. It arises where sun is strong, water is precious, and materials are sourced from what the land already offers. It is shaped by the need for shelter from heat, by the daily rhythms of farming and cooking, by centuries of craft refined through repetition. The homes in these regions, Italy, Greece, Spain, southern France, were built not for looks, but for living well within constraints. Stone kept the interiors cool. Whitewashed walls reflected sun. Wooden shutters filtered the heat without shutting out the breeze. Courtyards allowed airflow and created shaded space for rest and gathering. Every element was purposeful. Every gesture rooted in necessity. In this way, Mediterranean design is inherently sustainable, not because it's marketed that way, but because it always has been. Before sustainability became a buzzword, it was simply the way of life. Now, when we walk into a Mediterranean-style kitchen, we are walking into a system of values. Values like restraint, honesty, craftsmanship, and continuity. Let's look at some of these principles more closely. First, materials. The Mediterranean kitchen is made of earth. Literally. You'll see walls coated in lime plaster, textured and soft, breathing with the air. Floors laid with terracotta or unpolished stone. Counters and tables fashioned from wood that creaks, that warps slightly over time, that doesn't apologize for aging. These aren't synthetic stand-ins for the real thing. They are the real thing. And that matters, because authenticity can be felt. When you rest your hand on a stone countertop warmed by sun, you know you're touching something with history. Something alive. Second, form follows function. The shelving is open because it's easier to reach for what you need. The cooking area is central because food isn't a task, it's a daily ritual. Cabinets are built into the wall, not floating off of it. Drawers are deep and solid, not flimsy or ornamental. The logic of use dictates the layout. Third, imperfection is welcomed. You'll notice mismatched dishes. Hand-thrown bowls with uneven rims. Cabinets with scratches from decades of use. These details aren't flaws. They're a language. They're how the room speaks back to you. In the Mediterranean philosophy, wear and time are not problems to be fixed, they are qualities to be preserved. Even the colors speak this language of grounded humility. Off-whites tinged by sunlight. Ochre tones that echo dry fields. Faded blues that recall distant sea horizons. Olive greens pulled straight from the landscape. These hues don't dominate. They rest quietly, offering calm instead of contrast. And finally, there is a principle that underpins everything: air and light are the true luxury. We often think of luxury as more appliances, more marble, more space. But in this tradition, luxury is emptiness. Breathing room. A shaft of sunlight hitting a tiled wall. The sound of birds from the window. The cooling shadow cast by a vine-covered pergola. This is what it means to design for climate, not for image. To work with what is given. To shape the space so that life can enter easily and rest there. And perhaps that's what makes Mediterranean kitchens so powerful. They don't fight the elements, they flow with them. They offer a kind of refuge without sealing you off. A shelter that still welcomes the outside world. So as we continue, remember, this isn't about aesthetic replication. It's about philosophical translation. It's about asking not how do I make my kitchen look Mediterranean, but how do I let my kitchen feel like a place shaped by sun, by slowness, by care. That is the foundation. That is the root. And that is where we begin. Color is often the first thing we notice in a space, but in the Mediterranean kitchen, it's not about what the color says. It's about how it makes us feel. Here, the palette is not curated for boldness. It doesn't seek contrast or intensity. It's not concerned with being on trend. Instead, it's grounded in something deeper, the emotional temperature of a place. A kind of lived-in stillness that's warm, muted, and deeply reassuring. In the quiet hours of a summer afternoon, the colors around us should reflect what the body wants: calm, shelter, and ease. The Mediterranean kitchen does this not by adding more, but by dialing everything down. By creating a space where nothing shouts and everything rests. Let's walk through this palette slowly. We begin with white, but not a modern, clinical white. Think off-white, sun-washed, softly chalked. The color of plaster after years of heat. Of a linen shirt left too long in the light. These whites are never bright. They're filtered through dust, age, and air. They become a kind of visual silence, a background that lets every other texture breathe. Next, we move into the earth tones. Warm clay. Baked terracotta. Worn umber. Ochre. These are not accent colors as in the modern sense. They are the colors of walls, floors, bowls, and bread. Of sun-baked tiles and aging timber. They are everywhere in the Mediterranean home because they come from the earth around it. You don't apply them, you live among them. Then, there are the cooling tones, used sparingly, like punctuation. The faded green of an olive branch. The dusty blue of a shutter half closed. The grey beige of stone weathered by salt and time. These hues offer relief, not dramatic contrast, but gentle counterpoint. They balance the warmth without interrupting the flow. You'll rarely find bright primaries in this kitchen. No neon. No ultra-saturated tones. Even the greens, blues, and yellows are faded, as if softened by years of sun. That's not just aesthetic, it's psychological. These tones lower the room's energy. They support pause. They reduce stimulation and increase presence. In this kitchen, color isn't flat. It's tactile. It lives in material. A linen napkin in soft sand. A painted cabinet in pale sage. A handmade bowl in eggshell white, rimmed with uneven glaze. You don't separate color from object, because they come together, born from the same hand. Importantly, this palette isn't rigid. It's not a formula, it's a response. To light. To texture. To mood. What looks beige at midday might feel pinkish by sunset. What appears grey under a morning shadow glows golden when the late light hits it at just the right angle. And that's the beauty of it, the palette changes with time. The Mediterranean kitchen doesn't just use color to decorate. It uses color to calibrate. To bring a sense of inner stillness. To soften the edge of the day. To give the eye somewhere gentle to land. So as you begin thinking about your own space, consider more than just the paint on the walls. Think about the mood you want the room to carry. Ask yourself, does this color invite pause? Does it feel seasonal, natural, grounded? Will it age well, not just on the surface, but emotionally? If the answer is yes, then you're not just building a palette. You're shaping a rhythm. A quiet afternoon, held in color. In the Mediterranean kitchen, materials are more than construction choices, they are narrative surfaces. They hold time. They collect memory. And they age with dignity. This is a space where the passage of time is not erased, but revealed. A space where imperfection is not an inconvenience, but a form of truth. And that truth lives in texture. Let's begin with the most fundamental material, earth. The floor beneath your feet may be made of terracotta tiles, each one slightly different in tone, shape, and thickness. They were likely hand-molded, fired in a small kiln, laid unevenly over packed mortar. They creak. They chip. And they absorb warmth from the sun, releasing it back in slow intervals. Walking barefoot across them in summer is not just physical, it's sensory. It's grounding. Move upward, and your hand meets the walls. Not plasterboard, but lime plaster or natural stucco, breathable, imperfect, sometimes mottled with hairline cracks or smoothed by decades of touch. These walls are not simply painted, they are layered. They carry the shadows of the room differently from hour to hour. When sunlight grazes them in late afternoon, it doesn't reflect, it lingers. Now look at the wood. It's rarely new. More often, it's weathered, dry to the touch, and worn along the edges where countless hands have passed. Cabinet doors might be handmade, not factory milled, with slightly crooked lines or visible joinery. Shelves sag ever so slightly beneath years of dishes. Tabletops are scarred from knives, stained by wine, smoothed by elbows. And all of that is kept. Honored. Never hidden. This philosophy of texture tells us something important: beauty and wear are not opposites. They are companions. The materials in this kitchen do not resist aging, they rely on it. They become more beautiful because they are used. They become more real because they are flawed. Take the countertops, for instance. Perhaps they're marble. Unsealed, etched by citrus and oil, showing rings from mugs long past. Or maybe they're soapstone, cool and veined, darkening in patches from repeated use. These aren't mistakes. They're patterners. And they speak the quiet language of continuity, a life lived in rhythm. Even smaller materials carry this resonance. Woven baskets fray along the rim. Glazed pottery crazes over time. Linen towels fade at the fold lines. Every object is in slow motion towards softness. Modern design often encourages replacement. Mediterranean design encourages relationship. You grow alongside the room. You don't discard the chip bowl, you keep using it. It's part of the landscape now. And that landscape is built on sensory honesty. When you run your hand over a wall in this kitchen, it offers resistance. When you grab a spoon, it's slightly heavier than expected. When you lean on the table, it doesn't wobble, it anchors. These textures are not just visual, they're felt, physically and emotionally. They remind you that you're grounded, present, alive. So what does this mean when you're styling or renovating your own kitchen? It means choosing materials that will change. That will improve, not degrade, with use. It means resisting the urge to polish everything into oblivion. It means seeing maintenance not as a burden, but as ritual. A little oil on the wood. A touch of lime wash on a blemish. A shelf wiped down not to sterilize, but to care. And above all, it means understanding that what makes a Mediterranean kitchen timeless is not its look, but its feel. A feel built from tactile honesty. From age. From wear. From the humility of handmade things. From the quiet confidence that nothing needs to be new to be beautiful. These materials are not styled for a photograph. They are composed for a life. In the Mediterranean kitchen, the layout is not imposed, it's inherited. It evolves from centuries of daily life, shaped not by blueprints or glossy catalogues but by use, by need, by human presence. The result is a space that feels intuitive, generous, and grounded in the rituals of real living. Function here does not mean maximalism. You won't find a parade of built-ins, cutting-edge appliances, or exaggerated storage solutions. Instead, you'll find a kind of architectural humility, rooms that know what they're for and let you move through them with quiet ease. The first thing you'll notice, this kitchen is not a stage. It isn't designed to display perfection or entertain on command. It's made to be used. And not just used, but shared. The space encourages participation. There's a natural fluidity between cooking, gathering, eating, and resting. That's why the layout feels so porous. Counters don't form hard borders. There may not even be upper cabinetry in the modern sense. Instead, there are shelves, simple, often open, lined with plates and pitchers, always within reach. This openness removes friction from daily life. Nothing is hidden behind complex hardware. Nothing is sealed off. You move from task to task without pause. In the center, you may find a large wooden table, not an island. This table is not an architectural centerpiece. It's a life center. A space for kneading dough, sorting herbs, preparing fruit, sipping coffee, reading mail, and pausing between tasks. It anchors the kitchen but doesn't dominate it. It allows everything else to orbit around it. If there's a work triangle here, it's less about efficiency and more about flow. The sink, stove, and counter areas are spaced not for speed, but for comfort. The cook doesn't need to rush, they move naturally, with space to breathe. There's room for another person to pass behind. Room to pause in front of an open window. Room for a dog to curl up near the door, undisturbed. Even the storage solutions reflect this rhythm. Instead of high-gloss drawers with hidden compartments, you'll find wide, low cabinets. Wicker baskets tucked under counters. Hanging rods for pots and ladles. Hooks for aprons. Every storage element is out in the open, not as display, but as part of the room's daily utility. And then there's the absence of clutter, which is not achieved through concealment, but through intentionality. This kitchen doesn't feel minimalist because everything is hidden. It feels minimalist because only what is needed is present. The olive oil bottle isn't tucked away, it's next to the stove. The mortar and pestle isn't stored, it lives on the shelf. Things are used, not collected. This emphasis on functional simplicity has another effect, it makes the room feel timeless. A kitchen like this isn't dated by gadgetry. It doesn't shift with trends. Because it's built around the human body, around movement, touch, and use. Not around technology. Even pathways matter. There's a reason many Mediterranean kitchens open directly into courtyards or gardens. These layouts acknowledge that the kitchen is not an isolated zone, it's part of a cycle. From garden to table, from table to garden. From the sunlit terrace to the shady prep space. From early morning prep to late afternoon rest. This fluid connection between indoors and outdoors reinforces something profound. In Mediterranean life, the kitchen is not a place of confinement. It's a place of transition. A place where you begin the day and where you return to ground yourself. Where you work, but also where you recover from work. So when you consider your own kitchen, ask yourself, can I move without interruption? Can others join without crowding? Can this space support both motion and stillness? If the answer is yes, then you're not just designing a functional kitchen. You're designing a space that flows with life. That absorbs the rush without becoming rushed. That invites both presence and pause. A kitchen where function is not mechanical, but human. We often speak about kitchens in terms of visual composition, light, color, layout. But what happens when we step beyond the visual and begin to design with the ear, the skin, the breath? What happens when we consider the sonic and sensory quiet of a space? In the Mediterranean kitchen, especially one styled for a summer afternoon, stillness is not silence in the strict sense. It's not an absence of sound. It's a presence of calm. A curated softness where only essential sounds remain. You might hear a linen curtain fluttering in the cross breeze. The dry rustle of herbs hanging from a beam. A distant cicada drone, the occasional chirp of a bird, the hush of your own footsteps across stone. These sounds are not noise. They're a kind of sensory music, a subtle, grounding rhythm that allows the mind to rest. And that rest is intentional. In this kitchen, acoustic texture matters just as much as visual style. Hard, echoing materials are balanced with soft, absorptive ones. You might find thick cotton drapes, hand-woven rag rugs, wood furniture with natural grain, baskets made from palm leaves, and cushions in faded linen. These objects don't just add charm, they temper sound. They hold the quiet. There is also a restraint in appliance use. This is not a room filled with a constant mechanical hum. Refrigerators are often integrated, dishwashers concealed, and small appliances, if present, are stored out of sight until needed. This isn't just for aesthetics. It's to protect the acoustic stillness of the space. Because in the Mediterranean kitchen, silence is not empty, it's nourishing. It makes space for thought. For small moments. For ritual. Think of the act of grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. It's not fast, but it's deeply present. The sound is quiet, repetitive, physical. Think of slicing fruit under a window with only the wind as company. These are the rhythms of this kitchen, not tasks to finish, but experiences to feel. And this feeling of stillness radiates outward, shaping your relationship with the space. You stop rushing. You start listening. You notice things, the creak of a floorboard, the warmth of the countertop under your hand, the breeze shifting the scent of basil from the sill. Sensory silence is a kind of generosity. It gives you back your awareness. It lets you feel your own body in space, not overwhelmed by stimuli, not pulled by urgency, but held. And it's no accident that this stillness aligns with the heat of the afternoon, those quiet, golden hours when the Mediterranean world slows down. When shutters are drawn, kitchens dimmed, and people retreat from the sun. There's a cultural quiet here that seeps into design. The space honors that pause. It becomes a container for rest. So how do you translate this into your own kitchen? You design for acoustic softness. You reduce unnecessary mechanical noise. You let natural sound dominate: wind, wood, ceramic, footsteps. You select materials that soften reverb. You keep the space clear, but not sterile. You don't chase silence through control, you invite it through care. And perhaps most importantly, you give yourself permission to stop, to lean against the counter with nothing in your hands. To open the window, not for light, but for air. To experience the room without filling it. In this way, the Mediterranean kitchen becomes more than a room. It becomes a quiet companion. It holds space for reflection. It makes room for being. And in a world of noise, that might be the most luxurious thing of all. In the Mediterranean kitchen, there is no separation between design and daily life. Here, beauty doesn't come from grand gestures, it comes from repetition. From rhythm. From ritual. Ritual is what happens when an ordinary act is carried out with intention. It is the moment you pause before pouring water into a clay pitcher. The way you fold a linen towel and place it in the same drawer every time. The act of slicing fruit for the table even when no one is coming over. These are not chores. These are rituals. And they give shape to a kitchen soul. The Mediterranean home, especially the kitchen, is full of these moments. They're often small, slow, and deeply personal. But together, they create a design language that is lived, not styled. Take for example the act of making coffee in the late morning. In many Mediterranean homes, this involves a moka pot or a bricky, stovetop tools that require patience. You can't press a button and walk away. You have to stay with the process. The flame. The scent. The waiting. The serving. It's not a detour from the day, it is the day. Or consider the process of cooking lunch from scratch, often with ingredients gathered just hours before. Garlic crushed with the heel of a knife. Tomatoes peeled by hand. Bread warmed, not toasted. These aren't special occasions. They're normal, and they are treated with care. This way of living turns the kitchen into a space of continuity. You come to associate certain corners with certain tasks, a bowl of citrus always near the window, a ceramic jar of wooden spoons close to the stove, herbs drying in the same spot above the counter every summer. These aren't decorative choices. They're behavioral imprints. The room becomes a reflection of how you move, how you live, how you remember. Ritual also appears in how things are maintained. The act of oiling a wood countertop. Washing pottery by hand. Sweeping crumbs into your palm instead of reaching for a vacuum. These gestures build a kind of intimacy between you and the materials in your kitchen. You're not managing them, you're tending to them. Living with them. And the space responds. Over time, the kitchen begins to carry these rituals in its surfaces. The spoon rests where your hand always reaches. The drawer creaks exactly as you expect it to. The light lands just right on the stone where you like to read the paper or peel fruit. The room knows you, and you know it. There's no friction. No performance. Just quiet fluency. This is why Mediterranean kitchens feel so timeless. Because they are not styled to impress, they're shaped by use. Their design grows from life, not the other way around. So, if you want to bring this sensibility into your own kitchen, don't begin with what to buy. Begin with what you do, what matters in your day. How you make tea. How you clear the table. How you start your morning. And let those acts become anchors for your design choices. Ask yourself, where do I naturally pause? What do I reach for every day? What objects feel good in my hands, and why? From there, let the room evolve. Let it remember with you. Let it slow you down. Let it teach you what it means to build a space around your own rhythms. In the Mediterranean home, ritual is not a spiritual concept, it's a practical one. It's how life gets lived, beautifully, in the same room, every day, for decades. That is design. That is memory. That is presence. In the Mediterranean kitchen, decor is not seasonal inventory, it's seasonal life. It doesn't arrive in a shipping box. It comes in from the garden, from the market, from the windowsill where it's been drying in the sun. It is less curated, more gathered. Less purchased, more lived with. This kitchen doesn't rely on artificial fillers. No plastic greenery, no synthetic arrangements. Instead, every decorative element begins with nature, because that's what Mediterranean life depends on. The climate, the soil, the harvest. It all finds its way into the room, not just through cooking, but through presence. Walk into one of these kitchens on a summer afternoon, and you'll likely see a small bowl of lemons. Not placed for style, but because someone picked them that morning. You'll find olive branches in a tall jug, stems imperfect, leaves slightly curling. A woven basket of figures, a small bouquet of wild herbs gathered from the edge of the path. This is what we mean by natural decor. Items with a pulse, a scent, a shadow that shifts with the light. Nothing here feels frozen or over-arranged. Because it's not. It's alive. It changes by the week, sometimes by the hour. A jug of water and mint. A dish of sea salt. A handful of almonds on a tray. These aren't accessories, they're part of the story. And the story isn't one of abundance, it's one of restraint. Natural Mediterranean decor is often sparse. It leaves room for breath. It leaves surfaces partially empty so they can respond to the light. You're not filling the room, you're letting it open up. The materials, too, are honest and tactile. Earthenware. And glazed clay. Clear or green-tinted recycled glass. Wicker. Terracotta. Linen. Wood that still smells faintly of resin. These materials don't chase attention, they quiet the room. They let the plants, the produce, and the light do the talking. Think of it as ambient styling. Not static, not styled for the camera. The look changes depending on what's in season, what you cooked last, what you brought in from the garden without thinking. The kitchen becomes part of the life cycle of the landscape around it. There is a deeper message here: home is not a showroom, it's an extension of nature. Your kitchen is not a break from the world outside, it's a continuation of it. The colors, the textures, the air. When you decorate with what the season gives, you stay in rhythm. You remain present. And this type of decor is inherently sustainable. There is no excess. No throwaway objects. Nothing plastic pretending to be organic. You take what you need, you use what you have, and you return the rest, whether to compost or memory. Even scents are part of this approach. A bundle of rosemary drying near the stove. Bay leaves strung with twine. A bowl of oranges releasing their oils into the air. These are decorations that fill space with presence, not clutter. So if you're thinking about how to style your own kitchen in the spirit of Mediterranean calm, begin not at the store, but in the garden. Or the market. Or your pantry. What's in season? What's beautiful because it's useful? What brings you closer to the climate outside your window? And once you bring it in, let it live in the space. Not perfectly placed, not overly arranged. Just there. Just enough. Because the most powerful decor is the kind that reminds you you're part of something larger. A season. A cycle. A place. A life. As the sun drifts lower and the shadows lengthen across the floor, we return to where we began, not just in space, but in spirit. This kitchen was never about visual perfection. It was never about trend, status, or spectacle. It was always about atmosphere. About what it feels like to be here, in this room, in this moment. Sunlit silence is not the absence of sound or motion, it's the presence of peace. The kind of peace that accumulates over time, not as something you design toward, but as something that forms naturally when a space is built around living, not performing. Here, the terracotta remembers the footsteps. The wood grain holds every season. The linen still smells faintly of last week's bread. These are not signs of wear, they are signatures of life. And that is what Mediterranean kitchen design teaches us: the home is not a container for things. It is a participant in memory. It ages with us. It gathers sun, time, heat, and stillness, and offers them back as comfort. The breeze that moves through the linen curtain, that's not just airflow. That's architecture breathing. The chipped bowl on the shelf, that's not a flaw. That's a story, told in ceramic. The silence you feel while slicing fruit at the window, that's not emptiness. That's presence. So if there's one idea to carry with you from this episode, it's this. You don't need more. You need less, done well. Less noise. Less clutter. Less urgency. More light. More earth. More rhythm. More room to feel. Because in the end, the most meaningful rooms are the ones that let you arrive fully. With your senses intact, your breath slow, your mind settled. This was Sunlit Silence, a meditation on kitchen space, yes, but more than that, a reflection on how we choose to live. Slowly. Simply. In step with the seasons. In harmony with materials that remember. In spaces that hold not just activity, but soul. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Mediterranean stillness. We'll see you again soon. Right here at Charette Theory, where we explore interiors not as products, but as places to return to. Until next time, may your afternoons be golden.